What does Bill Gates know that is making him invest so much in agriculture, especially in general in GMO modified foods? Now, this touches on a few things such as food security and also as health and nutrition, because these foods that they want to feed us, they're not real foods; they're modified foods. You know, and what can be the side of it, like what can be the offset of that? So, Farmer Brown, let's go ahead and get this thing started off. Uh, what does Bill Gates know that we don't?
Prince in the mud, that's the only way to pay it. It's a dirty game, but somebody gotta play it. Get it from the ground, take it black to the basics. It's a dirty game, but somebody gotta play it. Came up out the water, then we landed in the sand. Way before the paper, getting money out the land. 50 out the garden with a shovel in my hand. Beat one ag, hope the family got a plan. Grinding in the city, trying to get it how we live. Everybody taking, ain't nobody trying to give. Switching up the way from negative to positive. Growing urban gardens till I come up on a field. Want it, then you own it, ain't no asking for permission. Lining up my rows, got my seeder in position. Fertilizing minds, drive the point through repetition. B1 focus, economics and nutrition. Black farmers matter, but I ain't about to pick it. If you ain't talking tangibles, then we ain't about to kick it. You can keep your charity, I show you where to stick it. It's black to the garden, show these youngsters how to flip it. Prince in the mud, that's the only way to pay it. It's a dirty game, but somebody gotta play it. Get it from the ground, take it black to the basics. It's a dirty game, but somebody gotta play it. Peace, family. So this is Farmer Brown MC. What does Bill Gates know about agriculture? So real quick, if you can see my screen, we kind of rigging it today, getting it from the ground. This is right now as of 2019. This is real estate, particularly farmland in North America. And so when we talk about Bill Gates, I'm gonna leave this up for a while so you can see these numbers. On average, agriculture is about 3,200 per acre. 3,200 per acre. And so when we're talking about agriculture, there's a difference between just buying real estate. You have trees, mountains, hills versus arable land. This will be your agricultural land where you have good soils. And right now in North America, generally the best places to grow produce for profit will be in your Mississippi Valley, some places on the East Coast and on the West Coast. But to put this in perspective, and so I know on the last show we talked about how, a lot of times hip hop culture follows the bag. Who are the people we want, to, I'm not going to say idolize, but hey, we want to compete with you with the bag. And so we've competed in sports. We've competed in driving popular culture, acting, recreation, all things entertaining. But when it comes to land right now of 1.9 billion acres, and this is just in the lower 48 states of North America, 1.9 billion acres, Black farmers only own 0.2% of the farmland. Let me repeat that repetition. Of 1.9 billion acres in North America, that's just the lower 48, not including Africa, Alaska or Hawaii, Black farmers or landowners only own 0.2%. When we think about ag sales, this is $1 trillion. Last year alone was $1 trillion in the U.S. economy. Of that money brought into the economy, Black farmers generated 0.2% of ag sales. 0.2%, not 2%, not 22%, 0.2. So that right there, there's ways it can make you frustrated. But once again, when we look
You, you're muted. You're muted.
how
There
much
you go.
did you hear?
Just go back about 2 minutes. I mean, 30 seconds.
Okay. So you didn't hear the bars?
Yeah, in the beginning. I mean, you just now muted,
Okay.
but you're fine now.
We're getting it together, people. The people that need to hear it is going to hear it, and the people that's going to receive it is going to receive it. And so to put this into context, in my professional job, a lot of people, they're excited about agriculture. Hey, you know what? This made sense. I want to get into this industry. What's it going to cost me? Anything of value is going to cost. When you put in perspective, the average amount of farmland in North America, you're looking at about $3,500 per acre. When we go back to Booker T. Watley in his book, How to Make $100,000 per Acre, you think about these acres, and I would say, realistically speaking, today you can get up to about 60,000 or more per acre just in vegetable production. That doesn't come with just, hey, I'm gonna go outside and plant some seeds. There's a lot of planting. And so when we talk about Bill Gates and what did he know, the largest state where he has farmland holdings is the state of Louisiana. When we look at it ecologically, this is where the Mississippi River comes down, and all of the deposits from up in Canada, Michigan, Illinois, all of those deposits go down the Mississippi River as it travels to the Gulf of Mexico. So what that does, it makes rich soil for that area. Same thing in the West Coast is rich soil. And so what he understood is, okay, the produce that people are eating, since we realize now that across the world, people are having to figure out how do they localize their food system. And so he's poised himself, he's got extra bags available to purchase farmland. I'm sure Mr. Gates is a proponent of GMO, as history and facts reflect. But I think this is also an opportunity for us to have this discussion. Now, are we competing? When I think about sports, I grew up playing sports. I kind of stopped in high school once I got in hip hop. But there's a dynamic of measuring yourself based on competition. Like we discussed last time, the thought of waiting around for reparations, reparative justice, it's a nice utopian thought. That would be a perfect world. But we're in a world where Mr. Gates just pulled like a quarter of the Louisiana Purchase. This is a private business owner. He owns organizations. And so we got to look at ourselves. I remember I used to live in Atlanta. This is back with Foxy Lady, Fox Trap, Magic City. We were down there with Rob Jackson. Shout out to the crew, Black Coffee. And I remember it would be days we went to the club. I mean, it would just be hundreds of thousands of dollars floating around at any given time. And, we kind of green coming from the city. So, small town in the city. So we kind of standing around dollars just popping you on the head. I didn't know nothing about agriculture then. But I remember, hey, we need 100,000 ones up to the VIP, $1 million in ones up to the VIP. And when we think about farmland and making it rain on some land, once again, we talk about agriculture as metaphors. We need to make it rain on some black land. If we know that black farmers only occupy right now 0.2% of 1.9 billion acres, we got to look at it. So I'm a city cat. I'm getting my bag in the city. I ain't got nothing to do with this rural space. I'm in Atlanta. I'm in Charlotte. I'm around these areas where there's a lot of good farmland. How can I be a part of it? I'm handling my business day to day, but, I want to get into how to invest. One of the things to make a farm able to operate is capital. It's okay. Maybe what I can't give with my time, I can give in capital. If I can make it rain in a club, I'm going to leave here, might have a good time, good story to tell. But you think about being able to infuse $3,500, $5,000 to one of these farmers in, say, rural Georgia, rural South Carolina, to start or help them with their already operating sweet potato production, collard green production. There's research, and as we carry this production, there's research where we know exactly what it is we eat. Down to the detail, down to how much time we spend going to purchase food. We know one of the reasons we're suffering from food insecurity is transportation issues. So when we think about within this food security dynamic, how do we create jobs? Delivery. I'm this cat in the city. I'm doing hair. I got my small business. I'm making bread. I'm gonna make it rain a little bit on some of this rural land, and what I'm gonna get from them, I'm able to help them get their growing season started. They're not sitting around waiting on somebody to promise them a loan or a grant. You're a private investor. As an inhabitant of the urban area, I'm investing in the rural area. Because what this now becomes, even if you're looking at it just for commercial purposes, this is where you're getting your food from. And if you're trap star minded, so to speak, now we're going to take this and flip it in the city with all of these people that eat these different products. But saying that to say, when we talk about farmland, Bill Gates, as a computer guy, understands the codified approach to, okay, I need X amount of land. I think last report, I think he owns 260,000 acres. And so that's a lot of land. But once again, there's 1.9 billion acres in play just in this part of North America. But what he understands is if I have X amount of these acres, for each of these acres, I can generate up to 50,000. When you're getting into using ag technology, this will be your high tunnels, your greenhouse facilities, incorporating black plastic growing, vertical gardens, aeroponics. You're able to make a lot of yield per, few $1,000s, relatively few thousand per acre. I think the most expensive, it'll hit you for about 10,000. But once again, when we think about the expendable money we spend just within our community, once again, like I told you, I'm in no position to tell somebody what to do with their bag. But when we look at what we invest in hair products, we're fly people. Hey, and that's a part of our culture. Embrace it. But what if we took a quarter, maybe not even a quarter, a tenth of what we spend in the 900, and I want to say 80 million and beauty products within the Black community? What if we took a tenth of that and just found specific farmers in these rural areas, Black farmers who can prove that they've already been working. They just haven't been able to access the same resources that other farmers have. These are opportunities that we can take advantage of. And in turn, they're able to produce products that can be distributed within a community.
Now, in our culture, like now, especially if you look at popular culture, we popularize $20,000-$30,000 purses, $5,000 pairs of shoes, just grotesquely overpriced products that like that. And then you say that the average price of an acre of land is $3,200 to $3,500. That is very cheap. And how many like just kind of put in perspective how much you can get from 1 acre of land.
Okay, so first to understand the acre, I'm just now, we got to understand spatial math. There's math on paper with digits and there's spatial math. An acre is pretty much about a football field up to the 30-yard line. If you want to put that in a square, it equates to about 43,000 square feet. And so within an acre, you can feed, if we were doing it as individuals, there's 200 individuals that could eat their annual amount of produce per acre. If you're looking at a family of 4, 800 square feet is suffice space to produce enough produce for a year. And so when we think about 75% of the 390 million people that live in North America only live on 3% of the land. Let me repeat that to put it in context. 75% of 390 million people only live on 3% of the land. Bill Gates, since we started this conversation about Gates, only owns 260,000 acres, meaning there's still billions of acres in play. Obviously, there's still landowners. Sometimes I think about the Homestead Act. Some families from Europe were able to come over, get hundreds of acres per slave that they had. And so, however we feel about it, we realize, dynamics are turning. At the end of the day, because we've commercialized our food system so to the point where it is now, it has no choice but to go backwards. And so this is a great opportunity for our community to be the Rockefellers and Carnegie of what the future of localized food security looks like. And so, individual takes 200 square feet to get your whole year's supply worth of fresh produce. For a family of 4, you're looking at 800 square feet per acre. If you're looking at sales, once again, it's not as simple as I'm going to just, give this person 5,000, I'm going to make money. Okay, there's other costs too. And so some of the advice I would give to anybody wanting to get into farming, I would definitely start small. And what the elders would say is only invest what you're willing to lose. An optimal 1 acre operation, I would say, will hit you between about 25,000 total. But this, once again, when we think about co-ops, communal economics, socioeconomics, this lends for other investors because you're looking at your infrastructure with your greenhouses. Like I said, your equipment, you can rent some equipment like your tillers. Me personally, I lean towards the smaller equipment. I lean towards the smaller spaces versus, trying to do the large scale monocropping.
Okay, now, when you're talking about an urban setting, there's not like a lot of land to do the traditional farming. You know, like you're saying, there may not even be. You might live in an area where you're so much in the city where you don't have an acre of just flat, clear land to do any farming. So what are we what are city people supposed to do? Like, what are their options?
So there's a brother in Chicago. I was a green fellow with him. His name is Keelan Blackwell. So he runs an operation called Eco House in Southside Chicago. Very successful. It's a flower operation. With agriculture, everything ain't got to be food. He literally sources different weddings, funerals. He has a flower operation. He conducts learning opportunities as well. This is in the middle of Southside Chicago. To put Chicago in perspective, it's actually the urban garden capital of America. There's 55,000 distressed properties. 55,000 properties that, you know, nobody lives here. This is just space just growing wild. So when we look at the opportunities, when we can see, okay, what can be yielded per acre? Okay, so maybe some of these distressed properties don't necessarily have a lot of good soil. Maybe it's a place where there's concrete, but this is where you bring your box gardens. These are your above bed gardens where you bring in your soil, where you bring in your different amendments and equipment. What if you have rooftop gardening? So I'm in the middle of a city. Every building that's occupied has a roof. You know, one of the simplest concepts and needs of growing food is you have to have sunlight. So obviously rooftop garden has become very popular. Now I would also challenge people to look up Sweden and nations like Denmark. You know, over here, we're trying to make the case of why this is important versus some people in other cultures look at us like, how do y'all have these large yards? And all it is, you just cut it and make it look good. Like, why aren't you making this space productive? And so applying that same thing in the city, like you think about when you go into New York City, if any of those bridges or tunnels get cut off, one has to ask, where's food coming from to feed millions of people, right? And so once again, the logical, most rational answer will be rooftop gardening. When we think about the tens of thousands of buildings just within the space of what we'll call the island of New York, these are opportunities. It's not like the great what I want to say opposite of recession where everybody has jobs, but you're looking at hundreds of jobs. If you can have jobs, delegated roles, a couple of hours a week, these aren't jobs where people retire from, but they're practical training. Typically within agriculture, you need about 2 years training with some sort of operation that you've worked with, ag management, some sort of 2 years experience. And so these are ways that regardless of what's going on in the world around us, we can actively, like yesterday, start pushing these young people towards, hey, these are careers. If you plan on staying in the hood, bro, look, these are spaces in the hood that can be monetized. Don't look at this as just a lot that's dirty. You know, we've done some yards like this down here in Lexington. These are just yards out west end. You know, the houses have been taken down, but they have yards. They have green space. So we're able to do urban gardens. And it's one of the most beautiful things seeing the neighbors coming around picking greens from a space that was just at one time just the old distressed property.
Now, in the midst of COVID, you know, there's a lot of job insecurity. A lot of people are having a lot of hard times. I tend with this, you can always find the solutions of the current day problems if you look back into history. So if we look back to, let's just say the Great Depression. Okay, one of the main ways we were able to get the country out of the Depression is that we actually turned to agricultural innovation. You know, when George Washington Carver and Henry Ford got together, they literally saved the country, you know, through agricultural innovation using the peanut and the soybean. You know, they were able to create value-added products, but they also used the nitrogen enriching uh, properties of the soybean and peanut to regenerate the soil and end the dust bowl because you know, the topsoil had become so corroded and the wind was just that's when that was one of the great causes of the Great Depression is just the land was so bad. And using the peanut and soybean, Henry Ford and George Washington Carver on a mass initiative were able to enrich the soil again, as well as create a whole new economy. So if we were to do this today, what would that look like?
I mean, so Think about it, in the age of COVID. And so we have all of these distressed properties. Once again, we're not, it kind of, I'm not going to say it's comical, but it's kind of like troubling and sobering that, there's this concept of when we go back to normal. Once we, jab everybody, we're just going to go back to normal. So much money has been made by large corporations with, the events of the last few months, like the concept of going back to normal. I kind of throw that away. But when you say, what does this look like moving forward? And so once again, this is an opportunity where we're either being, either you do it on your own or being forced into having to work communally. There's one thing I would say, there's different forms of currency. Obviously, there's fiat currency. This is what I can go to a store, to a market. I give you this paper. I give you these coins. I swipe this. You give me the product I want. There's also sweat equity. And so one of the biggest expenses of any farm operation is your labor. And so we know the H-2A workers that come from the border. But once again, you brought up COVID. And so, there's, regardless of the politics, 80% of the food we eat in North America right now is produced from hands that don't live in North America. To answer your question, to tie back to the Great Depression, 1930s, literally 5 years before that, did you know that black unemployment for males was lower than white males in North America? Let me repeat that. Black male unemployment of men like you and I, our unemployment was lower than white males. That's because we were agricultural. We were working with the horses. We were working in the fields. When we do the history, when I do a deep dive of the history of Kentucky, this is where the black men worked. They were able to go home with an honest salary. Like, hey, I'm getting dirty, but I'm coming home with the bag. And, in 2021, when I see who's driving these farm trucks, who's working on these horse farms, it's not the black men that used to do this. And so, like we said earlier, it's not about recreating the wheel. It's about reminding ourselves, when were we the strongest? And like I said, if numbers and statistics, fact check me, please. Numbers and statistics say our unemployment was the lowest when we were more agrarian, when we were more hands-on. It wasn't offices. We didn't have a choice of, somebody's going to hire me in an office because I can speak articulately. We come from great-grandparents. I know you've heard the stories of them having third-grade educations, meaning the things you learn in the book. My great-grandmother and them, they had functional ag operations with third-grade educations. And so the thing is, that was a part of their culture. And so the discussions that we're having is pretty much around how do we remind ourselves through repetition that this is a culture we need to take on. What this looks like, okay, so say 3 days a week. I'm this guy, I got this bag in Chicago, Charlotte, Nashville, wherever. I got the bag. I got a couple bands that I can, I want to do something. I want to balance my karma out. And so invest about 10,000. I would say practically, if you could spread 10,000 out between 5 different black-owned farms surrounding Nashville. Any city where you see a lot of black people, melanated people, you're going to have, speckled black farms around them. One thing. These farmers have dealt with so much, especially anybody that's been in it for decades. And so you don't want to go to a farmer like, hey, man, I got this great utopian idea. I want to help everybody. Will you do this? Use your land, use your resource for me to play my idea out. And then maybe we can't do that. We know there are people that we have as little as it is, we do have expendable cash. And so pay these farmers up front. This will take care of your equipment. This will take care of your seed. Out of this 2,000 I'm spending per farm, hey, we have these youth programs. We have these these youth sports leagues. Pay these boys a couple $100 per week to come out 3 days a week to work on fencing, to where I don't have to pay full dollar. And, most cities, I know we have them in Lexington, Kentucky. They have summer programs where they pay students just to find something to do. And in the age of COVID, as you say, we need more outdoor activities. You don't want people enclosed in these spaces. And so once again, it's a perfect opportunity. What do they say? It's a perfect chaotic opportunity. And so just with the manpower that already exists, what I can tell you about agriculture, even after getting a degree, you learn more by just being out there. So once again, this is your people with the bag, people that understand real estate, are good at investing. Make it rain on some of this black land that Bill Gates is aware of. A couple of thousand per year. Hey, I want to get X amount of pounds of collard greens. I have, 10 students coming from this academy, from this school, who's going to come out here. Their teacher, their program director, their coach is going to work out a schedule where each of them has two or three days a week where they're going to earn, $15 to $20 an hour. No, they're not going to retire from it. But if I was a 15-year-old, full of energy, wanting to exert myself, and I've been locked down for like the last year, you tell me you're going to give me, $20 an hour just to come out here, be in nature, to work on a fence, strengthen my arms, get some exercise. We're going to be walking up and down these hills carrying hay bales, and you're going to pay me for it. I'm out here with my coaches that I respect. I'm out here with my program organizers. Plus, this farmer done got a bag from this industrious person in the city. What we're growing out here is going to go back to the city. Somebody's going to eat it. And this is another set of jobs. And so you have a crew that's out producing. Like I said, we're not trying to make careers here. We're trying to be practical. You have a group that's producing, just helping the farmer. And then you have a group that's, okay, we need to store it. And if you watch the Mexicans, they work beautifully. You got a crew that's going to come out. I'm going to seed it. I'm going to get the land ready. Then I got a crew that's going to come out and harvest. So you harvest, you roll down the back roads in Kentucky. I mean, you see fields full of Mexicans come harvest time, harvesting tobacco, harvesting the corn and everything, working in tandem. It's you're a sports person, right? You're an athlete. So you understand the beauty of I'm accomplishing something with a team. There's an intrinsic value in that. But like you said, in the age of COVID, we don't want these feel-good moments. We want some practical solutions. And so saying that to say you have your teams that do production, helping these farms fix up their areas. Then you have distribution and storage. And so I know here in here in Kentucky, Black Soil KY, there's a fulfillment center where rural farmers are able to bring their produce in from rural areas. The CEO is able to now create jobs for 3 other people. Hey, I'm going to fulfill your order. We're able to sell subscriptions. The farmer doesn't have to sit on their produce waiting to see if there's going to be a market to come, waiting to see, maybe I don't have $800 to pay the farmer's market every year, because once again, as a Black farmer, you're taking a chance trying to compete. And so these are areas as a community, once we find value in it, it's not a thing of trying to convert your belief. It's simply redirecting like, hey, you got, make it rain over here. So saying that to say, so you have your jobs where you're just doing distribution. In the age of COVID, social distancing, so think about it. There's a brother in Ohio, and we're going to have him on. He has solar-powered bikes. These are like little scooters. And when we think about more sustainable communities, hey, Miss Jones, and who lives less than a mile from this food hub, which would be equivalent to the food fulfillment center we have here, she has a CSA basket. And so this becomes a job for this person. Once again, we're stimulating the economy to hop on these scooters made by this Black man to go deliver this, right? When my first job was selling newspaper subscriptions, door to door. This is long before cell phones and internet. And so same thing applies, face to face. Ask anybody who sold music out the trunk. Face to face, this becomes another job for high school age students. Door to door, masked up, looking good, market. We're out here competing. We want Farm A to sell more produce than Farm B, but we know we're funding A, B, C, D, and E. That's a great competition between Wendy's and McDonald's and Burger King. There's a lot of farms who grow cows and livestock that I love y'all's competition. And so if we can make these competitions practical within the city, there are economics. And the thing is to grow. If we can get a set goal of, okay, we want to address this 40% of food that's going to waste, and we want to address this 1 out of 5 Black families that's going hungry, that's food insecure. If we attack that and you put this on a 5 to 10 to 20-year plan, you've created thousands of jobs. But it takes planting the seed. I can have this great idea. Oh, I want this huge farm. And if I just sit, writing down on paper all year, here comes spring, I ain't planting nothing because I'm trying to make this perfect operation. Guess what's not going to happen come harvest time? So saying that to say it's a thing of marketing. It's simply marketing. If we can market the concept of why agriculture is important, why somebody like Bill Gates sees the value in purchasing 260,000 acres of prime farmland, if we can just get that to be a consistent conversation in our culture, those that already know. People, I'm going to the Bible. I'm taking off my tinfoil kufi, putting on the cloth. Study to show yourself approved. In our studying, what have we found? There's always value in land. What was the first job? Where was the first setting? It was in the garden, right? What did it say? As above, so below. We operate in cycles. But to end my point, like I said, so we find ourselves on the precipice of a moment like the 1930s when the Great Depression came. A lot of markets are changing. Since we lived after the 30s, we realized the world didn't come to an end. That's why I'm optimistic. Like, man, this is about to be a windfall for whoever, really looks at it and focus your skill set. That's one thing. When we think about farms, people think, oh, just out on the farm chewing on straw. Like, no, we need to look at farms like enterprises. The same way I would look at, hey, I have a phone company. I sell you phones. I sell you computers. I sell you food. I'm gonna modernize my operation in a way that nobody has. What does Neely Fuller say? Do the best thing to help the most people with the most constructive help, and do it better than anybody's done it. We haven't put a codified large-scale approach towards not only strengthening the already existing Black farmers, but raising up another layer. We haven't done that in decades. It's not to take away the work of all of the people, hundreds of people, Black brothers and sisters around America who's been around the world that's been putting in the work. But we need thousands of our minds. We need to reach a critical mass. You're never going to get everybody. But if you have a critical mass of us that's like, you know what, I know how to get to the bag. I know these crazy tree-hugging people over here, they know how to grow something. I know the hood that I represent, I feed my block. Okay, I'm feeding my block. The ladies, the elders that can't leave, okay, don't worry about it. We got you. We got these teams that go around make these deliveries. Oh, you're in a congested area? Oh, we'll have these community centers that we partner with, right? And so once again, the bag is in innovating this food system. How do we get the seed to the person? You can't go wrong with owning land, even if you don't want to grow nothing, which I think we're at a time now, make use of every asset you have. Even if you don't want to grow nothing, land always appreciates in value. Back in the Bible, before there was a such thing, or any historical text, before there was a such thing as fiat, you had land. I can really give you something that is produced from this land, not an idea, not a hope, not a gamble. If you own this, this is yours to utilize. And so our concept with B1 Ag is make this an exciting topic. This shouldn't be something conspiratorial. It shouldn't be something, oh, that's for them people over there. This is something that we can master. And truth be told, as the sister Vicky Diller said, we're in our finest hour right now. The universe is waiting for us to make a move, right? I mean, it's reached the point now the world is looking at the melanated people in America like, what are y'all going to do? Y'all have all of the resources that nobody around the world ever had to really make a true, long-lasting impact on this planet. And so, one of the things, and I'm going to shut up, one thing I noticed about livestock, we were talking about the other day about how you want to breed your bulls to be docile. When I want to get you to breed one of my heifers, I don't want you to come attacking me. So I'm going to breed you to be docile and keep you isolated. But a smart farmer understands that this bull reverts back to its natural essence. It can just turn his head, and any fence I build, wood or steel, just with the turn of this bull's head, he can knock this whole fence down. I might make electric, put a zap on it, but if this thing reverts back to its natural essence, there's nothing I can build around it. If we apply that to the Black mind, if we apply that to the things that we focus the collective Black mind on, there's no fence, whether economic, proverbial, literal, there's no fence that can hold us. And so the world is waiting for us to not invent, but get back Black to the garden where we started. Our ancestors got this world popping. I don't need a history book or anybody. I mean, it makes sense, right? Things grow where it's warm. Our ancestors come from areas where there was an equator. That's not up for debate. I don't know what to call us, but I know it was those people who figured out, now, how can we get our food consistently? How can we clothe ourselves with the materials from the ground, the fiber? How can we get from point A to point B with the resources we have? Oh, I can use this wood, turn it into a wheel, turn this into an axle. I don't have to just sit and walk. I don't got to strain my oxen. It was our ancestor who mastered these things. And so to me personally, in my modest mind, one of the best ways to honor our ancestors is to tap into that which they've already put into our genes. Epigenetics. We have the skill set to drive what food security for the whole planet looks like. We see the effect of hip hop on the planet. We see the effect of our culture, our food ways, soul food, the way we dress. We see that effect on the planet. And so if we can get a critical mass of us to be like, you know what, I just want to feed my block. These people that have been strong enough to keep their land in these rural areas that we typically don't talk about. Since I'm getting bands on top of bands. I'm gonna make it rain somewhere where I can get a yield from it. And so once again, it's not about telling somebody what to do with what they earn, but at the end of the day, rationale says everybody eats. Everybody doesn't do dope. Everybody doesn't listen to music. Everybody's not into sports. Everybody doesn't want cosmetics, but these are things we spend a lot of money on, right? And so if we can just internalize, like, you know what, there is a never-ending trap of food consumers. I know how to, if I'm a person that knows how to talk, I got real good at that, selling newspaper subscriptions. How can I convince somebody to buy this produce from this brother or sister out in this rural area that took the time to grow this? How can we create the herbs for the local chefs, the local food systems that want spices that this brother can grow on a balcony garden? Once again, it's getting the farmer's market popping like the Carter. If a 5-year-old today, when I think about my twins, if they today just get a concept in their mind of what it means to produce life, to produce something from nothing, regardless of what my English words will say to them, their minds and experience, however this world changes, is going to give them the innovation. They have, I'm repeating myself, they have the internal genes to create something big. So my job as a father, let me point you to this. Let me not tell you how to look at it, but let me put this in context for you. So B1 Ag, this is what this is about, putting this in context through repetition. We got to keep this conversation going. Once again, we look forward to having more voices.
Now, I know I got my degree in economics. So one thing I know for sure is 3 pillars to wealth are food, clothing, and shelter. We as humans, those are the basic human needs: food, clothing, and shelter. If you can provide that for yourself, you produce your own personal wealth. And the funny thing about food, clothing, and shelter, you can grow all 3. All 3 of those, food, clothing, and shelter, these are products that are grown. So we need to really tap back into our natural ways of just being connected to the land. And it's a mass awakening that we need to have. And I'm very excited with B1 Ag, and I hope we can continue to bring this to you so we can create our own change, so we can print our own money, so we can sustain our own wealth, so we can thrive no matter what this economy is doing.
Right. Let me put my tinfoil kufi on before we get out, my tinfoil kufi. So what if, Nelly Fuller says we learn things through question and answers, right? So what if there was this nefarious plot to inject everybody with just some magical poison and, the world turns into drones? What if you're in a system that says, well, since your business has gone down, since you've lost your job, since, hey, the people that had hired you, the business no longer exists. And I'll give you this stimulus, I'll stimulate you, but you got to get jabbed first. What if you're in a situation where you don't believe in it? I'm not here to try to steer anybody's mind towards anything, but what if? And in the spirit of question and answers, what if there's a situation where your ability to feed your kids, your ability to move about, conduct business, you got to get this jab, right? Guess what you can't do as a parent or somebody I have to feed the people I'm around. No, if you're the point I'm making is if you're producing your food, that's for what you say, food, clothing, and shelter. The tinfoil Hotep, or, as they will call him, he says, we're going to a time where things are about to severely change. We're not going to go back. There's already a talk of IDs for interstate travel, and, some of it's justified. Okay, quality. And, in a time of sickness, pandemic, you want to be able to, keep up with everything. But, it's very profitable. But, data is the new gold. I got the data of how people are moving. I got the data of people's eating habits. And so if I own the land that's producing the food, that's triggering these eating habits, I can tell you to do anything, and it don't matter what side of the aisle you're on. It don't matter whether you call it the Most High, Allah, atheist. It doesn't matter how you feel about social issues. If you can't feed yourself, you got to do whatever I tell you to do. And so, like I said, my thing is, this is not to come to it from a negative angle. my anxiety, I feel like I'm over here like an excited puppy because of the opportunities. And I feel like, to me personally, I feel like the universe is talking to us like, hey, pay attention. This is important. Look at this. Watch this. And so in the spirit of question and answer, what would you do if? How much do you know about producing food? How many conversations have you had with people around you that produce food? If you ask your children right now, hey, who's the top 3 NBA players? And you ask them who's a black farmer where I live, if they can't answer that, then, you know, it's a mass sit down that we have to have with one another. All of us should have at least 2 or 3 alternatives to where we're getting basic needs, right? Food, clothing, and shelter. This isn't to be crazy and conspiratorial. It's practical.
Yes, we are what we eat, and we should know what we eat, and be make these conscious decisions. You know, live consciously. You know, live intentionally. You know, make intentional steps when we live.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. We're gonna wrap this up. I'd like to thank y'all for checking in with us today with B1 Ag. We'll be checking back in with y'all soon. Hey, if you really want to know something,
learn how to grow something. Million black shovels at the same time. 4, 3, 2, 1. Game time.
All right, y'all. Take it easy.